What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be talking about what if Donald Trump outperforms the national polling in every single state for the 2024 presidential election. Now, before we get started with the video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that post notification so you don't miss another video that I post, and make sure to follow the Twitter in the description down below and join the Discord server as well. Now, before we get started, guys, I do not have the face cam on because I am actually kind of sick right now, so it is kind of affecting my voice and stuff. So if you guys do see a little bit of a kind of a weirdness to my voice or whatever, please excuse me for the next couple of days. And so without further ado, let's get into this. And so pretty much, guys, all of the red states Donald Trump won by close to 15. I'm basically going to characterize all of those by safe margins because either way, they would pretty much end up going to him by over 15 points no matter what. Alaska would probably we'll touch Alaska because maybe Alaska doesn't, and maybe a state like, Kansas, and these might not, but we'll get to them in a second. But in terms of like certain states should in fact go for him by over 15 points, basically no matter what. And so the next state we're going to do is actually, we're going to look at Washington. Now, Washington, as of right now, actually is a 10-point win for Biden. He won the state of Washington by 19, and the polls had Biden up by, let's see, by 23 points in 2020. He won it by 19. So this actually drags the state because it's a 23-point lead here. He wins it by 19. So it's effectively a 4-point miss. So that actually brings Washington down to only a 6-point win for President Biden. And so pretty much, guys, the next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Oregon. Now, the state of Oregon had a 21-point lead for Biden in 2020. He ended up winning it by 16 points. And the polls currently have him up right now. I actually think they have him up by more than what he's winning. He's leading the aggregate by probably like 11 or 13. I'd say he's leading it by like 13 points. And so 16 there, 21. So it's about a 5-point miss. So that puts the state down to a 7-point victory for Biden. If you look at California, California was a state that Trump was down in the aggregate by 29.2. So it was actually fairly accurate. It actually the 538 average basically got it accurate. And so if we were to kind of look over here and go ahead and look at the state of California, he's up in the state by 21 points. So we would just leave it in the 21 plus column for President Biden. The next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Alaska. Trump was up by 7.7 points. He's up here by 10.1 points in 2020. And as of right now, he's currently leading the aggregate by 12. So that actually puts the state exactly in the safe column for Trump as of right now. The next state is going to be the state of Hawaii. The state of Hawaii, as of right now, in 2020 was a 34-point lead. He ended up winning it by 29.5, so it's a 5-point miss. And right now, I actually think there is no polling data out of the state, I believe. I don't think there should be any polling data out of here. So because of that, I'm going to put it in the safe Democratic column as of right now. However, this could be closer than expected. So for now, we're going to be putting it in the plus 15 column for Joe Biden. And the next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Colorado. The state of Colorado, very left trending state, had basically had Biden up by 12.5 points right before the election. He won it by a point extra. And right now, Joe Biden is leading the state effectively by 6.5 points. So that actually puts the state at a 7.5 percentage point win for President Biden as of right now. New Mexico is the next state we're going to be looking at. He's leading by 11.5. He ended up winning it by 10.8. And right now, Donald Trump's up by 8.3 points. So it goes a point down. So this is a 7.3 percentage point victory. So they basically kind of vote with each other as of this cycle. The next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Kansas. Now, the state of Kansas had Trump up by 12.9, and he won it by 14.6. So it underestimated him by 2 points. And right now, he's currently up in the aggregate by about basically roughly around 16, 15 points. So that puts the state in the safe column for Donald Trump. The next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Texas. The state of Texas has been moving to the left in recent years. However, as of right now, it looks like it is taking a turn. Donald Trump was up by 1.1 in the state. He ended up winning it by 5.6. And right now, the aggregate actually has him winning it by 8.8 points. So if you were to actually apply that, he would be winning the state by about 12 points as of right now, which is very, very interesting. If you were to go to the next state we're going to be looking at, which is going to be the state of Iowa, you're going to see a massive overperformance for Trump. He was up by 1.3 in the state. He ended up winning it by, basically 8.2 points. And right now, Trump is up in the state, I think, by like 12 points or something like that. He's almost 11.5. So basically, that actually puts Iowa in the safe Republican column for Donald Trump, believe it or not. In the next state, the state of Illinois, blue state, however, could be closer this cycle. Biden was leading it by 16. He ended up winning it by 17 points, actually. And so if you look at the polling data right now out of the state, he is leading the aggregate by probably, I'd say, 11 points. So he probably wins the state by 12 points as of right now. The next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Ohio, which currently has Donald Trump at 0.8%. In 2020, he ended up winning it by 8 points, and right now the aggregate should have him at like 10 points or something like that. Yeah, so he basically ends up winning it by 18 points as of right now. The next state I'm going to be looking at is the state of Virginia. If we look at the state of Virginia, very left trending state the past couple of years, Biden was leading it by 11.8. He ended up winning it by 10.1%. So it actually did overestimate him slightly. And right now in the aggregate, I believe Biden is up by like 4 points. So as of right now, that actually puts Biden at only like a 2-point win in the state of Virginia, believe it or not. So it is much closer than it was in 2020. The next state I'm going to be looking at is the state of South Carolina. If we go to South Carolina, as of right now, Donald Trump was leading it by 7.1 percentage points. He ended up winning it by 11.7 points. So that was a 4-point underestimation on his part. And as of right now, I think he's actually up by 15 in the aggregate. So, oh wow, so he actually wins the state by 20 points as of right now. The next state I'm going to be looking at is the state of Florida. If we were to go to the state of Florida, as of right now, Biden was actually leading it by 2.5 points. Trump ended up winning it by 3.4 percentage points. So that is a 5-point underestimation for Donald Trump. And if you look at the aggregate, he is leading it by so much that there isn't even an aggregate for it. So probably he's up by like 8 or 9 points as of right now. So he probably wins the state by almost 15 points as of right now. Basically, all these safe Dem states are probably going to stay where they are. Maybe New Jersey and Delaware will probably get more competitive if the polls do actually underestimate him or overestimate or underestimate his support. They will probably be closer. There's not a lot of polling data out of these, and some of them don't actually have any polling data. If you look at the state of New York, Donald Trump was down by 29.4 points. He ended up winning it by 23.1. And if we were to actually go over here and look at the aggregate, there is no official aggregate. However, he's currently leading. I'd say he'd probably only be leading the aggregate. Biden only leads the aggregate by like 11 or 10 points. So if you were to actually apply a polling, miss of 6 points, let's say Biden leads the aggregate by 10, he's actually only up in New York by 4 points as of right now, which is pretty concerning for the incumbent president that a state like New York would be closer than Colorado or Virginia. And so we basically come down to the more competitive states. We're going to go from west to east. In the first state, we have the state of Nevada. Now, in this state, Biden was up by 5.3. He ended up winning it by 2.4 percentage points. And Donald Trump is currently up in the state by 3 points. So that actually puts it in the likely column for the former president. He actually wins it by 6 points in this scenario. In the next state, we have the state of Arizona, where Biden was leading by 2.6. He ended up winning by 0.31 points. That was a 2-point overestimation there. And if we look at the aggregate as of right now, Trump is currently up by 5.2 points. So that actually puts Donald Trump at a 7-point victory in the state of Arizona, which would actually be pretty insane, compared to today's standards. If we go to the state of Georgia, Biden was actually up in the aggregate by 1.2 here, so it actually overestimated him by a point. And if we were to go over here and look at Trump's aggregate, he is currently up by 5.2, so that puts the state at a 6.2 victory for the former president. And if we go to the state of North Carolina, as of right now, Donald Trump, back then was actually down in the aggregate by 1.8, and he ended up winning it by like 1.3 percentage points, I think. Yeah, he ended up winning it by 1.3. And so that is like a roughly a 3-point miss. And I think right now the aggregate has him up by 5. So that actually puts him, he's up by 4.4, but that still puts him in the likely category as of right now. So the entire Sun Belt, if the polls were to underestimate Trump's support, are not looking good for the incumbent president. He loses all of the Sun Belt states except New Mexico by over 5 percentage points. So none of these are even competitive as of right now. If we were to go to Wisconsin, which is the first, actually, let's do Minnesota first. If we go to Minnesota, right? So in this state, he's up by 9.2. He ended up winning it by 7.1. And right now, Biden is up in the aggregate, I think, by 3 points. So that actually brings the state down to only a 1 point victory for the former president, or excuse me, for the incumbent president, Joe Biden. If we were to end up going to Maine, if we look at the state of Maine, what's actually interesting is Biden was leading it by 13 points and he ended up winning it by 9.1. So that's a 4 point overestimation in the state. And right now, the polls have Trump basically, up in the state. Because this is way too old. These polls are pretty much way too old. I'd say in the aggregate, if there was one, he probably leads it by probably 2 points. So if you do a polling error, that actually puts him in the likely category. That would put Maine's first at a safe margin and put this at likely. So he actually wins Maine by a pretty comfortable amount. And now we are closing in on the final states of the 2024 presidential election. If you look at the state of New Hampshire, the state of New Hampshire had Biden up by 11 points. He ended up winning it by 7.4. And the aggregate, I think, has Biden up by about 8 points. So that actually brings him down to a 4 point victory in the state of New Hampshire. For the last four swing states, including Nebraska's second, we'll actually go to Nebraska really quick. The state actually had Biden up by 3.8 percentage points, which was an absolutely ridiculous miss. Trump ended up winning the state by 19 points as of right now. And so that's a humongous miss. If we go to the first district, Trump was up by 2 points there. He ended up winning it by 14 points. So that's automatic. Those are safe. We're really focused on Nebraska's second district, which as of right now, oh, that's weird. I guess the aggregate is the same. Well, anyway, he was up by 3 points. He actually ended up winning it by 6.2, and there's no polling data out of there. But I guess based out of that polling, I'd say probably Nebraska second falls in the lean Democratic column. And for the last three states, Trump is already at 270, by the way, because he actually wins Maine. That actually puts him at 270. So he could theoretically lose the rest of the swing states as of right now, get the Sun Belt, get Maine, and actually win the Electoral College, funny enough. But we are going to look at the state of Wisconsin, which currently has Trump up by 0.8 percentage points, which he's never usually led the aggregate here ever. He's led it for brief periods of time, but usually not for a long time. Biden was up in the aggregate here by 8 points, and he only ended up winning it by 0.63, and Trump's up in the aggregate by 0.8. And so I think that if you were to do a polling miss, Trump ends up winning the state by 8 percentage points as of right now. If you look at the state of Michigan, Donald Trump lost the state by 3 points in 2020. However, the thing with this, guys, really right now, Biden was up by 8.2, and he ended up winning it by 5 points, which is a pretty big or ended up only winning it by 3. So that's a 5 point miss in the aggregate. And so if you were to look at the aggregate right now in Michigan, Trump's actually up in the state by 3.5 percentage points. And he's at one of his highest points he's been at in the aggregate as of right now. He's actually at the highest he's ever been in terms of his raw vote share in the state. And so if you were to apply a polling error like that, he actually ends up winning Michigan by more than what he even wins by Wisconsin by. He actually ends up winning it by 8.5 percentage points in the final state here, Pennsylvania. If we were to go look at Pennsylvania in the 2020 presidential election, Biden was leading it by 4.7 percentage points. He ended up winning the state by 1.2. And Donald Trump, I believe, is actually barely up in the state by 0.2. So he'd currently be winning it by a lean margin as of right now when everything is all said and done. And so the final map would be 314 electoral college votes to Joe Biden's 224 electoral college votes if all the polling data in the swing states ends up underestimating Trump by 3.5 percentage points, or excuse me, or by all of the polling misses that all the states gave in 2020. And so if you guys did enjoy the video, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to hit that bell so you don't miss another video that I post, and make sure to follow the Twitter and join the Discord server in the description down below. And I hope to see you guys very, very soon.